It's a challenging time to be a teacher. We don't get paid a lot, the days can be long and exhausting, demands from students, parents, admins, and districts can be intense. There is always room for improvement, and there is always more to do. There are always new procedures to learn, new programs to run, new strategies to master. But it's when our fire burns the lowest that we remember our purpose. We teach because we're resilient. We teach because we're problem solvers. We teach because investing in kids is one of the highest callings we can imagine. We teach because we know that the classroom can be a place of magic and possibility. We teach because we have an unquenchable fire for learning and a passion to share it. We teach because our colleagues are some of the best human beings we will ever meet. We teach because we have an opportunity to influence the global citizens that will make this world a better place. If you're still on fire for learning and growth, join the Teachers on Fire Roundtable for conversations that will warm your heart, spark your thinking, and ignite your practice. You'll hear from real people and real educators with real solutions, not make-believe perfection, but ideas, inspiration, and a path toward change and transformation in K-12 education today. My name is Tim Cavey. I'm an 8th grade teacher, assistant principal, and the host of the Teachers on Fire podcast. I'm inviting you to join us at the Teachers on Fire Roundtable. Because you matter, your voice is important, and we are all better together. Well, good morning and welcome back, Teachers on Fire, to another conversation that will warm your heart, spark your thinking, and ignite your professional practice. I'm excited to get into conversation this morning with Ronald Hae. He is a business teacher, stand-up comedian, and the host of the Teacher Hotline podcast. So, Ronald, good morning to you, sir. Thank you for being here. If number 1 is burnout and 5 is on fire, how are you feeling this morning?
Oh man, this morning I would say I am doing pretty good. I can't remember your scale now. What, one? One, I think I'm on fire right now. I am definitely on fire. Yesterday I was probably more on the 5 scale. I feel like lately, the last couple of years, the scale keeps tipping from day to day. But today, definitely doing pretty damn good.
All right, that sounds great. Good to have you here on well, you said 1. I think whatever it is, we're at one end of the scale. We're on fire and feeling good. So that's a great start. All right. Well, Ronald, you are a bit of a first for me, I think, because you have dabbled in this fun area of stand-up comedy. And thinking about stand-up and watching your stuff, I was just so impressed because as you, I'm sure, have heard your whole career, certainly a stand-up career, I think stand-up has to be some of the most terrifying work imaginable to most people. So can you take us on that journey of stand-up comedy before we get into the teaching?
Yeah, so I was a big drama geek in high school, and I was lucky enough to have an amazing drama teacher. We never did stand up actually in school, but it was something that I was really interested in. And I remember going to Western University, the school I ended up going to, and I joined the comedy club there. And they promised that we would learn a little bit of stand up comedy, which we never ended up doing. We just ended up doing improv. So that wasn't really for me, so I left. Fast forward years and years down the road, I went for coffee with a former student, and we somehow ended up having a similar conversation that we are today. And they said, you know what, why don't you think about taking some classes at Second City? They got some courses there for stand-up comedy. So I enrolled. It was a 6-week course with this big final show at the end of the term. And we performed in front of our family and friends. My teacher thought I was good enough to be the headliner for our show. And I was like, that was a huge compliment. And I did the show. It went really, really well. Someone came up to me afterwards, gave me their business card and say, hey, you know what? Come down to the club. We'd love to have you perform in front of a real audience. Did that, did well. And honestly, I've never looked back. I've been doing it for, heck, that would have been what, January of 2017? Yeah, about the 5-year mark now.
Well, I've seen some of your stuff, Ronald, and you had me laughing. Definitely check it out if you are watching this live or on the replay this morning. Take a look at Ronald's work. What do you think that brings to your teaching practice? Those gifts and the talents that you've developed there. And I mean, you've shed a lot of fear along the way too. So how do you think that impacts your practice?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because when I signed up for the courses at Second City, uh, I was very fortunate enough that my school was supportive of this professional development. So the school actually paid for a lot of my training. And with that being said, because they paid for it, I have to kind of pitch to them, how does stand-up comedy, how does that translate into the classroom? Because the two seem so odd.
Right.
And a lot of the stuff that I said in my pitch, I wasn't lying about it, right? Like a lot of it was, how to think on your feet, how to bring humor into the classroom, especially for a topic like accounting, which is
Right.
so damn dry. Um, and I'm not saying this just for a laugh, but I find that truly the classroom audience, the students, they're a tougher critic than sometimes the
Right.
actual paying audience. So that being able to kind of survive bombs on stage really helps me to be able to develop a thick skin in the classroom.
I like that too because I feel like I try a lot with the teacher humor and the dad humor around this place. I've got a couple high schoolers at home and they let me know if I'm cringe or if I'm remotely, if I'm doing anything right at all. And usually that's a big no. Well, well, hey, if you are joining us live, let us know. Would you ever consider stand-up comedy? Would you be willing to grab the mic and go live in front of an audience? Cammie's here. She says, your school paid for your stand-up comedy course? Wow, nice.
Yeah, they were really nice about it. Our school is really, really progressive with the PD, and they always say to us, you don't feel like you have to sign up for just your traditional
Right.
PD, right? Like go do what you want to do. And I thought, you know what? All right, I'll take you up on your offer and let's do stand-up comedy. And I'm not gonna lie, I thought they were gonna reject it, but they were really open to the idea. And as a result, I thought I had to pay back the school in the sense, not like the money, but I ended up starting a stand-up comedy co-curricular after school program with the kids. So now every day after school, I'm training a group of 12 kids. We're going to put on a live show at Yuck Yucks at the end of the term.
Oh, wow. That is so cool. And again, I mean, they could practice right there in your school, do a little, I don't know if a comedy assembly is a thing or if that's even a possibility, but a good place to sharpen their talents there.
Absolutely.
Well, you're also, as you alluded to, a business teacher. So talk about what it is about teaching business to high schoolers that really lights your fire. Is there a particular aspect, module, unit, something in there that you find especially energizing?
Yeah, I think teaching business in general, I absolutely love. And I think if you are a business teacher yourself, I think you know what I'm talking about. I find that the one big feedback that you always get from students is everyone's heard it, right? Like, oh, when are we going to use this? Why are
Right.
we learning this? Like, why don't we learn something actually useful? And I'm blessed with teaching a subject that just naturally lends itself to everyday practicality, whether you're in going into medicine or engineering. Like everyone's going to have to invest their money one day. Everyone's going to have to build a retirement portfolio. So I teach accounting specifically. So I teach a lot of number stuff. And I say to the kids that, you don't have to become an accountant to take accounting, right? We're all going to be reading statements and learning how to invest into the stock market. So this is stuff that you're going to be using regardless of what field you're into. So I find that I get a lot of buy-in from kids as a result. And it makes it so much easier to teach because they see the connection with real world and what we're doing in the classroom.
Yeah. Where do you think we sit today, Ronald, in terms of financial literacy in our K-12 schools? I don't know about you, but I feel like I left high school, and although my parents gave me a lot of tools, school itself, my K-12 education, didn't give me a whole lot in terms of preparing me for the worlds of credit cards and taxes and investing and real estate. So where do you think we sit today? And I'm sure, I won't put words in your mouth. How do you think we're doing?
Yeah, I think there's room for improvement. I think that there are.
Yeah.
I think there are some schools that are doing some amazing things, but I think right now a lot of those amazing things are happening with only a small handful of students across Canada, and it really depends on the teachers that want to make that happen. Now, with that being said, I don't know what's it like in BC, but I think in Ontario we tried to incorporate the financial literacy in the grade 10 career studies course.
Okay.
And that happened a few years ago. And I remember asking my students, I'm like, so by the way, like, how's that unit coming along? Or how's that coming along with financial literacy? And the kids are like, Oh yeah, that's just a unit that we do. We spend maybe like, I don't know, a couple days on it. Like, you gotta be kidding me. And at our school, we have guidance counselors teaching career studies.
Right.
And a lot of, I'll be honest, not to knock our guidance counselors, they're amazing, but some of these guidance counselors, financial literacy is not their specialty.
Right.
So, there's a disconnect there. So in my world, in my view, I think the perfect way of doing it would be to actually have a course, like a mandatory course that every kid takes.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I understand that there's some logistical problems there in terms of staffing, scheduling, but I think at the end of the day, if we want to reach perfection, I really think there needs to be a course that kids take. Because right now, I'm teaching financial literacy in my classes, but I got a class of 10 kids in grade 12. That's nothing in the grand scheme of things, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm such a fan of everything you said, and I think somehow if we could mix into that into that course, into that instruction, some learning around entrepreneurship, and just this idea that you can actually build a business. I'm sure that's close to your heart. You can get out there. I think most of our kids are familiar with the idea of the gig economy, at least remotely, but it doesn't have to be a traditional professional track necessarily.
Yeah, and the problem is too, I
yeah.
find that not even every school has business electives, because business is an elective course, at least on Ontario. I don't know about other provinces, but if you don't have the elective, the kids don't even get the option to talk about some of these things.
Cami is here saying Alberta's new math curriculum will have a personal finance strand in the new K-6 curriculum. More of a touch on than anything, sort of what you were talking about there. Well, thank you. Speaking of Cami, thank you to our live and replay audience for joining us. If you are enjoying this conversation, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support is appreciated as I make my way to 1,000 subs by the end of this year. Well, Ronald, speaking of entrepreneurship and side gigs and side hustles, and sometimes side hustle has a bit of a negative connotation for some people. I don't think it should, but what is behind the Teacher Hotline podcast? I so love the brand. I think that message of hope and support for teachers has never been more timely. Tell us about that journey.
Yeah, thank you. So the Teacher Hotline, the whole premise of this podcast is it's like an old school radio show where you would call in and be like, hello, hi, I have problems with my plumbing. And, the radio station would bring in a plumber and talk to you about how to fix your toilet. So that's kind of the idea for the Teacher Hotline is, you have a quote unquote caller that calls in, whether it's about your retirement funds or pension plan, about stuff going on in the classroom. And then I try to find a professional guest that can help answer that question. That's not necessarily a teacher. Like, I brought in professors from universities, researchers, people that manage pension plans, anyone that can kind of get the job done. And I've been doing this since last April. So we're approaching a year now. And we finished season 1, and right now I'm working on season 2.
All right. Well, thank you for featuring me, having me on.
Yes.
I was so glad to connect with you on the Teacher Hotline, and I'm now a subscriber. So keep up that great work. In the theme of sanity and just personal wellness, I find some of my colleagues and maybe other teachers look at my work at Teachers on Fire and think like, isn't that stealing your rest time? Isn't that driving you insane? And I feel like it's the opposite. It actually gives me more fire and more passion for education. Do you find the same?
100%, right? Like,
yeah.
I'm not doing this for the money. Let me tell you that. There's no money involved. But you're right. You do it for the passion. You do it for the learning. It really gives me a cool chance to be able to meet other educators and people around the country and across the world. Heck, like, that's how I met you, right? We wouldn't have met if it wasn't for the podcast. I met someone in the States, in Florida, at UCLA. I wouldn't have met that person if it wasn't for the podcast. So I thought it was a great chance to really meet some new people and just talk about education. And it serves as it's kind of my own informal PD and talk about things that I'm personally curious about as well. So I absolutely love it. Definitely not stress.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it too. It's sort of this opportunity to connect with other educators every week, have these professional conversations, Sometimes they go deep, sometimes not, and I think both are needed. Speaking of international visitors, we've got Mel coming in from Colombia. Good morning to you, Mel.
Oh, hello,
And
Mel.
she is a fantastic supporter. Ronald, you've got to connect with Mel A. I have to give you her.
Mel. Say hello to me. Reach out. Tell me what your handle is. Love to say hello, Mel.
Yeah, follow Ronald at Ronald Hae. Well, let's move on and sort of going back to business, Ronald. I feel like teachers today face this problem of this crazy, and most of my listeners and viewers are in the States, but both of our countries face this crazy inflation. Some are saying 20, 30-year highs. So, excuse me, we've got these fixed incomes where our salaries are not necessarily indexing. They're certainly not keeping pace with inflation. And so if you're not investing in equities or real estate or something out there, you're actually losing your money. So I know, sort of skimming through your feed and thinking of your role as a business teacher, you've got some ideas here. And so I'm curious, what are your recommended strategies? And I asked this question as the market has just taken a beating here in the last couple of weeks in 2022. But what are your go-to investing strategies for this year?
Yeah, I think the first thing I want to say is, and I say this to my students in our grade 12 accounting class, but we have an investing focus, is everyone should have a different plan. Like there is no one, I think,
Sure.
strategy that kind of overlays that everyone can kind of follow. It depends on what your goals are, what you're trying to achieve, and more importantly, though, what your timeline is, right? Like, are you planning to use that money next year to go buy a house, or are you saving this up for retirement? Because I think that will then dictate what you are actually buying. But to answer the question about, how do we now tackle inflation? I think really the simple answer is you got to be in equities at some point. I think right now in fixed income, whether you're in bonds, that's not going to do much, right? With rising interest rates, you're going to see bond prices fall. So that's not going to be great. Things like in Canada, we got GICs that pays absolutely nothing. And if you're in cash, cash, to your point, you're losing money during this time, right? So I think it really depends on what your risk tolerance is, because when I say equities, that can range from, emerging markets to, your core S&P 500 index funds. And each of those have different risk tolerances there. So for me personally, I'm trying to just save up for a bigger home one day down the road. I don't like to get into some crazy stuff. Like I'll buy my S&P 500. I buy something called XUS is the ticker symbol, ZSP, BMO and iShares products. I buy a XEF, another iShares product, which is more about European markets. And I get, of course, Canadian markets as well. XIC, another iShares product. Super, super cheap funds, MER fees, 0.1%. So cost effective, and you get to diversify your portfolio.
Last year, Ronald, was the first year that my wife and I really got into the investing game, and way late to that party, but
never too late.
Yeah. And I picked a few stocks that went really well: Tesla, Apple, Google, TD. And so most of those were winners, ended up doing about 19% on the year. And so that was really encouraging. Now, like I said, the first 2 weeks of 2022 have been terrible, really awful. But I want to keep that going and, just maintain that habit of regular monthly investing. We know most of us as teachers have our pensions, but we can't just rely on those, right?
Yeah, the pension, that's a good question. I had a guest on my podcast talking about the pension plan. And I find that a lot of teachers sometimes they just rely on that. But the one thing that you forget is life can take you on these weird paths, right? You might not retire at 65 years old with a pension. Maybe you might retire at 40 years old because you want to go down a different route. Well, guess what? That means your pension gets reduced. So now if you haven't been investing, you are really, really behind. So it is important to constantly be investing into our RSPs and TFSAs. In the States, I don't know. I think there's something else that's called something a little bit differently, but some sort of investing plan I think is necessary. But yeah, no, definitely. Those are some great stocks, man. Those did really, really well.
Yeah. I think one of our American friends can help us out here, but I think the American equivalent of the TFSA is the Roth IRA, maybe. if I have that right. I'm going back to my Dave Ramsey reading here. But
Mm.
hey, Ronald, one more question before we leave the investing. I have to show you a stock that took a particular dive, and I'd love to hear your prediction on this one. So here we go.
Let's
You
take a
ready for
look.
this?
Please show. Let's
So,
get.
so here's the stock. It is Netflix, and I don't know if you noticed this, but Netflix went on this huge dive, and I think it was triggered by their raise in monthly subscription rates. So, as a little bit of context, I can't remember what I'm paying right now. Is it 16 or something like that? I still remember going, and I'm older than you, I think, probably
Yeah.
by a lot. But I still remember going to Blockbuster and renting 2 new release videos on a Friday night for about $12, and this is like 20 years ago. So I feel like, man, a monthly subscription under $20 is still a steal of a deal. But what's going on with Netflix and just looking at this company, do you see it coming back, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not too worried about Netflix, to be honest with you. These are just, what you call your daily, weekly fluctuations. This happens. You could go back, a year, 5 years, and you'll probably find similar trends like this as well. If again, I haven't looked at Netflix's financial statements,
Sure.
and just looking straightly at their trend and how popular they are, I wouldn't be surprised if Netflix bounces back. But I think it comes back to any investment, whether it's a fund or any particular stock. You really need to be patient and think about the long term. I've never been a day trader. I've never been short term with my investing. So I know a lot of times investing, there's an emotional component
Right.
to it. And if you really believe in the stock, and I should say these are stocks that do well financially, like they're making money and you actually believe in it. I'm not talking about your penny stocks or whatnot, but if for a 500 company like Netflix or Facebook, you can't have a short-sighted line of thinking, or else, heck, it's going to cause a lot of trouble with your investing strategies.
The only ones that get hurt on the roller coaster are the ones you jump off while it's still moving, right?
Exactly.
Well, we're starting to wind down, Ronald, but I love this question just on a personal level. So tell us, thinking of wellness and self-care, what is one app, routine, or daily practice that gives you clarity and recharges your fire?
Oh, that's a good question. I've been listening to the Headspace app
Oh, yeah.
recently. I'm sure that everyone's heard of it. It's actually on Netflix, ironically enough, as we were talking about it. And our school, and I'm pretty sure this is actually not for our school, it's for every teacher out there. Headspace gives a free subscription to teachers. And I use it in my classroom as well sometimes to give kids even a break. We put on, 10 minutes or 5 minutes. And I've been listening to that, and I've been building a routine to just get into a lot of meditation and to just get into my own good headspace. Because I find with this lockdown, especially in Canada and in the States, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 months being at home, it really, really gets to you. It feels like you become like you're sitting in a luxury prison sometimes, and you forget how well you have it. So I try to bring some clarity to myself by taking some time to sit aside, put on that app, listen, meditate. And let me tell you, it is completely changed my life. Amazing. I thought it was hocus pocus. I thought it was a bunch of baloney before. And let me tell you, it is amazing. I do it every single day now, and definitely changed my life over the last year.
Wow, that's one of the better reviews I've heard. So Headspace, I know another big one in that space is the Calm app, and there are a few others, but Headspace for sure. Well, thank you for that one. And as we're going, by the way, to those who are viewing us live, let us know what would be your answer to this question. What is that app or routine daily practice that keeps you sane? That's what we're focusing on today. And Ronald, next question. Whose voices are inspiring you right now? Is there a particular author, speaker, podcaster, creator who is lighting your fire?
Oh, there's always so many. I think right now, because I've been wearing so many hats with the podcasting hat, teacher hat, comedy hat, I've been more in the comedy zone lately because I've been running that, like I said, that comedy co-curricular with the kids after school. So I've been watching a lot of stand-up, try to get into that more creative space. There's a new season that came out on Netflix called The Stand-Ups, and it features 5 up-and-coming comedians. The one comedian that I absolutely fell in love with lately is his name is Dusty Slay. Absolutely killer. I've heard of him before, but this guy had me in stitches. Amazing. Another one of my favorite comics, Mark Norman. I've been watching a lot of his stuff. So comedy-wise, I would say those would be 2 people I've been following. Someone recommended a really cool podcast to me the other day as well. I think it's called Smartless, with Jason Bateman and a couple of other big actors. They bring on big guests like Jerry Seinfeld and LeBron James, and they pick their brains and kind of have similar conversations that you and I are having. So I've been listening to that, and that has been absolutely incredible.
Those are some great titles and names. Thank you for that. You know, speaking of Jason Bateman, Ozark season 4 is out, and I got into that a little bit last night. That was so
came
good.
out last night.
Yeah. Oh. Well, actually, or a couple of days ago. It's out now, and so if you're into money laundering dramas, check that out. Well, hey, I want to pull you back to a question here from Nate. Just cycling back for a moment, he asks, "Will young teachers be able to afford real estate? Or should we go all in with stocks?" This is a great question, Ronald, for Toronto area or any of these big metropolitan area viewers. Thank you both for everything. So what do you think for young teachers? Is it time to give up the dream of home ownership and just go all in on equities? What are your thoughts on that?
That's such a tough question to answer. That's a great question. That's a great question. I think with real estate right now, heck, like, what are you doing, right? Like, it is just so unreasonably priced right now. And the people that are buying homes, I think I read in a Globe and Mail article, they're getting into the market because they've been fortunate enough to just get a lot of financial gifts from their family members, whether it's mom and dad or grandparents. So that's how they've been entering. So it makes it challenging for people that don't have that, to get in. So what do you do next? Well, I think the natural thing to do is to kind of look outside and broaden, your radius. So for me, I live in Mississauga in Ontario. So if I were looking for a home, you start maybe in Milton, Grimsby, St. Catharines. You kind of just keep going out and out. And the problem is, even those cities now are getting ridiculously expensive. Like I have a friend who's a physician, and he was looking in the St. Catharines area, which you would think would be cheaper, but they paid for a home that was well over $1 million. And let me tell you, like, they even agree, like, it's not $1 million home, but it's a nice home, but a little bit overpriced. So it's getting to the point where it is not possible. So I think you're right. I think you need to be a little bit more aggressive with your investing if you have that risk tolerance for it. Going in all in equities, again, I don't know. I think that's going to be a challenging question to answer. I think it depends on what other goals you have in mind. Me personally, I'm invested all in equities. I don't know if that's a smart move or not, but with that being said, I was lucky enough to get into the real estate market 5-6 years ago. So I have some equity built up into my condo right now. And so, yeah, I'm invested in all equities. I got a little bit in bonds, I say, but it's not really enough to do anything. But yeah, that's a tough one. Whoever asked that question, that's a really good question. I don't really know if anyone really has an answer for that right now, but I think you got to be in equities. You got to kind of look in the surrounding areas and see what you can get. Because it is not easy for anyone right now.
Here's my take on that. I feel like I mentioned I have 2 high schoolers here at home, and I know the market's crazy in Vancouver, Toronto, crazy California, other centers, but I still am not giving up on the home ownership. I think there's such a benefit. Personally, I really believe in that. And so I think it's time for the bank of mom and dad to step up a little bit. And what I mean by that is in all of these centers where there's been this huge appreciation, mom and dad have seen, $300,000-$400,000 gains in equity in 1 year. And it doesn't actually hurt them a whole lot to take out a HELOC against some of that equity and help out, Johnny and Sally get into their properties. So that's my take. I think there's an opportunity for parents to help out. I know not everyone is in that position. Definitely, I'm aware of that. But
the big problem is, I think, is these bidding wars, right? Like, you could have the money, you could have enough capital to put down a down payment, but then what happens when you go up against another couple that is going to outbid you by an extra $100,000, $200,000, which is what's happening. And there's just nothing you can do about that, right? Which is, I think, the frustrating part for people going out to buy these homes is they've done the work, they've done the savings, and then someone comes in and just completely outbids you. And that's tough.
Great question, Nate. Thank you for that. Ronald, 2 more for you. Talk about a current or upcoming project that you are focused on. This could be on the Teacher Hotline side, the comedy side, or both. Where's your mind right now?
Ooh, I got a couple things up in the air right now. I think the number one focus was the one thing I was telling you about with the big show I'm trying to put together for my students. We're hosting a show in Yuck Yucks, Burlington on April the 7th. I think that's a Thursday. Right now, we're training the kids to write and perform, and they've never done any stand-up comedy ever in their entire life. So to be able to hit the stage during a pandemic is going to be a lot of fun. I think people are going to be ready to laugh and to go to live shows by then. So that's going to be Thursday, April the 7th. I'll be hosting the show. I'm going to hire a headliner. That's going to be so much fun. It's going to be a hell of a time.
That's awesome. Eric is here. Hi, Eric. Thank you for joining us on LinkedIn. He says, excited for what's coming with the Teacher Hotline.
I love Eric.
Thanks, Eric. So speaking of that, and as we close, what are the best places to find you, Ronald, and sample not only the comedy, but also the Teacher Hotline podcast?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, on Facebook at the Teacher Hotline. Go check it out. Click follow. Love to have you guys. You can find my podcast on really any other streaming sites, Apple, Spotify, Google, you name it. I'm all over the place. The handle is at the Teacher Hotline. Personal handle, you'll see it on the screen right there at Ronald Hae. Feel free to add me up, say hello. That'd also be really, really nice. But yes, I'm excited for season number 2 and cannot wait to get that all fired up and ready to go.
Hey, Doreen says, exactly. Good luck from Lebanon. Thank you so much, Doreen, for joining us this morning, or maybe this evening where you are.
Lebanon, hey. Holy moly.
LinkedIn is a fun place, I got to tell you. Hey, thank you so much, Ronald, for taking the time. Again, on your Saturday, that really means a lot to me, and I know it's going to mean a lot to viewers out there. You bring such a unique package to the table with your financial sense and your comedy and now with the Teacher Hotline podcast. So appreciate that. So take care, my friend. Let's stay connected and can't wait to keep learning from you in the future.
Tim, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks to all the listeners. You got such a loyal fan base, and your podcast is amazing. And I can't wait to do this again. This was so much fun, man.
Thanks, my friend.